So this is part one of a two-part series that's going to be covering Squid Game and Disco Elysium and some extrapolations I've managed to get from each one about their reflections on capitalism and how they reflect onto and are reflected onto by the real world. Unfortunately, no dirt on the guy. Halfway through writing this video, Jack Saint released his own video about Squid Game, and it kind of already covers a lot of the talking points I was going to be discussing in the video, and I feel like he did a better job of doing what I was trying to do, and I really don't want to retread on what someone else has already said. So, in the interest of time, I split the video apart due to massive rewrites on the Squid Game part that was already pushing this video a lot further back than it would have been originally released, and I thought it was causing me to rush the Disco Elysium part. Plus, almost 16 hours of content about the whole Zaum situation has just been released by the 41st Precinct YouTube channel, which I also need to take a good look at before tackling Disco. I swear it's coming though. I really want to prioritize quality over the speed on these videos, so thank you all for being patient, and I hope you enjoy part one of this two-part series taking a good look of capitalism and the effects it has on art. Squid Game, as many people can already point to, has a weird relationship between Squid Game the franchise and Squid Game the art piece. Season 1 was not expected to be a success by the creator Hwang Dong-hyuk, expected to be a one-off show like several other South Korean dramas. Then, it won 6 Emmys, made almost $400 million, and basically exploded within the public zeitgeist of Western and Eastern culture alike. So, you end up with this strange pop culture explosion of a show that somewhat pushes against the ideals of sensationalism in a capitalist society, which can be linked to consumerism, but I also don't think Squid Game has any humongous things to say about consumerism, mostly just capitalism as a whole. So in order to piece out this strange phenomena, let's take a look at what Squid Game started out as, a television show that just showed up on your Netflix homepage that your coworker told you that you just had to watch, or something along those lines. By the way, spoilers for Squid Game and several other things adjacently related to it, like Squid Game The Challenge and Beast Games, but I'm assuming you don't care much about that stuff if you're watching a video like this. I genuinely think that Season 1 of Squid Game is one of the most genuine TV shows I've seen come out of Netflix originals. Now, I'm not saying the best, but I can tell that there is a genuine care about the message being portrayed in the show. The creator is stated to have lost several teeth from stress just while writing Season 1, and while I am strongly against crunch culture and like, dude, you should have taken better care of yourself, something like that has to say something about how much the person cared about what they were doing. He put his show out in an already somewhat saturated market of East Asian death game TV shows, facing low chances of success to put out a message I assume he probably cared about a whole awful lot. So, to try and do him a bit of justice, I'm going to go over what I think Squid Game Season 1 was trying to say somewhat. And once again, like my last video, I have to emphasize that it is art. There is no objectively right answer for what an interpretation of something looks like, and a lot of it bounces back on the individual analyzing it. So, take what I have to say with a grain of salt. But I'm fairly certain I ended up getting the broad strokes correct here. Now, the show starts out by emphasizing the all-encompassing nature of the capitalistic system. We follow the protagonist, Gi-hoon, number 456 for those who haven't seen the show, which is something I'll get into in the analysis of what happened to the TV show. And one of the first things you'll notice about the guy, heck, the only thing you'll really notice about him, is how much of a poor deadbeat he seems to be. He's living with his mother, spending whatever cash he can get his hands on in horse racing gambling rings, and it's shortly revealed that he owes a few hundred million won to the bank, and another few hundred million won to some predatory loan sharks. He's broke, is what the show wants to tell you, but he's not nearly alone in that department. Throughout the show, you're introduced to many more characters, all of which are dealing with some kind of financial situation or scrambling to make a quick buck. Cho Sang-woo, 218 people, was a childhood friend of Gi-hoon's, who had big success as an investment banker before losing it all on bad investments, accruing 6 billion won of debt. A victim of bad luck and a few poor decisions, if what he says is to be believed. We see even more of this throughout the show. Broke people who aren't all bad people suffering due to just doing bad deeds. Ali Abdul, player 199, is a Pakistani immigrant working a basic factory job trying to provide for his wife and child. His boss just hasn't paid him in months, and he's been accruing more and more debt. Kang Se-byok, player 067, is a North Korean defector, taking her and her brother across the border to South Korea in hopes of finding a better life for her and her brother. She's been drowning in debt due to spending piles upon piles of money trying to find and bring her mother back from North Korea. A fairly noble goal if I'm one to say. Even those working in the game are looking to make some money, hiding an organ harvesting operation on the eliminated players to make a quick buck from the games, probably dealing with their own financial situations that make it seem justified to them. The show is quick to emphasize that those stuck in poverty aren't all there just due to being a bad person, although some are, or irresponsible with their money. Once again, some of them are. We live in a system that looks for the flaws in individuals and tries to squeeze whatever money it can out of said flaws, even when those quote-unquote flaws are an example of selflessness or a general piece of hopeful naivety. It's a cruel world. This message is even further enforced with the concept that the only way to get ahead in the Squid Game is to turn against your fellow man, games such as red light, green light being made as safe as possible when standing directly behind someone else. This is a bit more benign of a concept than some of the other games are, but it still emphasizes that the best way to stay afloat is to let others take the fall for you. Shield yourself with the bodies of others, literally. Most of the games, if not all in the show, are allegories for different capitalistic concepts. Look at the honeycomb game, for example. It can be extrapolated that this is an example of the inherent advantage some people have over others despite the random circumstances coming into it. You don't know what you're doing when you start. You are just expected to randomly decide on a cookie, and that's the one you're stuck with. That may feel like a stretch, but I think there's a good bit here. Later on in the show, the front man gives a little speech about how important equality is to the games, saying that these people here, regardless of what happened in the outside world, are given a fair and equal chance here to make it big, get the life they've always dreamed of. Obviously, though, he's a hypocrite. I mean, it's not a massive revelation that the people behind the Squid Game are hypocrites, but the cookie game is a good example of it. Not the only one, though. The glass game is patently unfair to the people who pick earlier, essentially acting as fodder for those who go after. While look, more capitalistic messaging about the sacrifice of others for personal gain. Another thing with the game is that he personally rigs it. The glass maker knows how to tell the glass apart, and under the system that the games support, that should be fine. People aren't punished for being smarter or stronger in the games. In fact, it's a massive boon to have some kind of advantage against your other players. Despite that, though, the glassmaker is punished despite his skill being a skill. He's given different, more difficult circumstances than the other players were. I mean, the lights are turned off on him, and it's all done just for the sake of the people who are trying to be entertained by the games, the hidden VIPs that I'll talk about in a second. Another big idea touted in the show is the destruction of identity and dehumanization presented by a system of capitalism. I mean, the world is run on numbers, and people are the main input to said numbers. The show takes this very literally, each player being attributed to a specific number themselves, and their very lives being converted into money. 100 million won per death. Makes the sacrifice of human lives seem pretty appealing, and the fact that no one uses each other's names in the game makes it even easier. I mean, one of the most personal things you can do for someone in the games is to let them know your name, because it turns you into a person to them. It makes it a lot harder to cold-heartedly kill someone if you have to acknowledge that they are a person, not just player 079 or something like that. The dehumanization stretches beyond just the players, though, as the show kind of states that those in the elite positions have given up their humanity to become who they are. I know, another stretch, but hear me out. The VIPs of the show are these enigmatic figures, puppeteers guiding the strings of the game and the reason that they exist in the first place. And how are they represented? Animal masks. The elite are literally represented as animals. And not just any animals, predators and other generally imposing beasts. Buffalo, panther, lion, eagle, owl, and deer. Okay, I know the deer isn't that imposing, but it is a kind of scary deer mask, like more of a fuck-ass cryptid than a normal deer. Regardless, they are literally separated from humans in their very design. That's gotta be symbolism. And if it isn't, it's the biggest fucking happy little accident I've seen in a very long time. Despite all of this, though, the show goes out of its way to emphasize that despite the facades put up around the elite, they are just as human as anyone else if you really boil it down. When the panther mask is removed in the most uncomfortable scene in all the show, he's shown to be a normal man who, like other normal men, freaks the hell out when a gun is put to his head. Despite all the bravado, he is still painfully mortal. There is no real power he holds besides symbolic power and wealth. The rich are also shown to be just as irresponsible as the poor, the panther throwing away millions of dollars on gambling based on funny numbers, picking 69 because it's funny, and then 96 because it's close to 69, and it's funny. The front man furthers this, talking about while Gi-hoon and others bet on horse races, the VIPs bet on people races. They're both stupid, arbitrarily putting money on the line for a quick thrill. The difference is that the rich are immune to the struggles of the world. They are no different from you and me, and often much, much dumber. They are just so stinking rich that all their money makes money. Shown later in the show with an investment banker being given to Gi-hoon after he wins, showing that he can make loads of money while doing nothing. So, they suffer no real risk from their decisions. And yes, this is true in the real world. Just look around at some random, I will not name, rich people, and what $44 billion investment they made that completely flopped. Imagine if it was you investing something for even $44,000 and it tanking to a fifth of its price. It'd sting real bad, wouldn't it? Sounds like you made a stupid investment, didn't you? But if you're disgusting rich, it's nothing. And if you screw up enough, someone else will bail you out. Sorry, that one got personal about a random rich person that totally doesn't exist and is just a fabricated hypothetical and that I hate with every fiber of my being. Chasing after wealth is also widely shown to be pretty bad for human socialization as well. The games emphasize destroying those around you, and one in particular pushes you to destroy the one closest to you for financial gain. The marbles game has players choose a partner, and the wide assumption is that you should pick someone you think you'll work well with. For most players, this is the friends they've made throughout the game. Then the situation is flipped on its head, asking the player to kill their partner in order to be able to live. You see friendships crumble and people be forced to destroy those that they're closest to. Sang-woo kills Ali, manipulating him cruelly to get all of his marbles in order to be able to win. Even the generally selfless Gi-hoon is turned cruel, playing off Ilnam, 001 guys, come on, stick with me, to screw with his dementia. If he actually had dementia, something else, but what matters is that Gi-hoon thought he did and still used it against him, moments after declaring himself Ganbu, or best friends with him. In one of the less talked about but still cruelest moments of the show, in my opinion, a man is forced to kill his own wife, the person closest to him. This decision eventually leads him to eliminate himself from the game, if you catch my drift. One of the final scenes in the show, as another example, is the biggest example of the betrayal and destruction of relationships caused by the constant chase for wealth. Gi-hoon and Sang-woo fighting in the Squid Game the show is named after, a bloody clash of knives and mud and rain, ending with one childhood friend leaving the other dead in a game that used to be a good memory from their youths. One of the most important things, I think, though, isn't really discussed that much, is the sensationalization of it all. The show is obviously inspired by the concept of game shows as a whole in the real world, and other big, highly presented competitions for money shown all throughout television. It takes it to the extreme, making a death game hypothetical. There's the AC unit again. But the idea remains the same. People are extracting joy and entertainment out of seeing others struggle for money that they need desperately. Even if you're rooting for the underdog or whoever you think deserves money the most, you are still supporting the existence of a TV show like that as a whole. It's taken to the natural extreme with the gratuitous violence and death, but in other game shows, people still end up leaving without money that they desperately needed. But no one thinks of that, do they? It's all about the thrill of the games, the high-stake tension, not the sad walk back to your normal life, not a penny richer. Squid Game does, or did, condemn that sensationalist mindset. All of the previous things add into that as well, the dehumanization, the betrayal, all of it. Creates for an easy-to-consume but still thrilling piece of media, while the undercurrent of a show that takes advantage of those who badly need money is ignored. Think about the worst things you would do in your life for a large sum of money, and then think about what else you would do if you were in a situation with a massive debt that threatens the lives of yourself and your family. What wouldn't you do for that? Does that sound like a voluntary decision? Everything has a price, even free will. The games were voluntary, but due to the manipulative system that ruins the lives of countless people, they really had no choice but to play, or else they drown in the urban jungle outside. And unfortunately, real life can reflect that sometimes. This is where we get into some of the biggest examples of Squid Game being consumed at what it first condemned. So, what the hell happened to Squid Game? A big thing to mention on why I think Squid Game Season 1 feels so earnest in comparison to all of the spin-offs, parodies, and Season 2 to a little bit of an extent, is because it comes from a perspective of a man who has seen financial hardship in his life. You have actual connection to the source material. The writer I suck at pronouncing any kind of Asian name whatsoever, any language. So I'm sorry, I'm white. This is my bad. The writer Hwang Dong-hook saying that he would spend days in cafes wondering about other death game manga and thinking about if he would take part in them for his own shot at financial success. I don't like to associate suffering as a requirement for good art, but you can't argue against the fact that a genuine connection to the situation you're portraying makes it feel more realistic. Netflix, as a company, though, is not making things for the sake of art. They stream media for the sake of profit. And that's how example 1, if I'm being honest, one of the strongest example of the bastardization of Squid Game comes into play. Squid Game The Challenge is a very strange piece of media to exist in the first place. This is a reality TV show / game show that follows the events of Squid Game using real people from the real world instead of a group of fictional characters in a fictional depiction of South Korea. Basically, Netflix decided to make Squid Game from the titular TV show Don't Make the Squid Game into a real thing. It loosely follows the events of the original show, starting off with red light, green light, having some downtime between games in the main bunks, where instead of having players kill each other, they do little mini-games and tests, like having people choose others to eliminate or putting the Squid Game phone. It's so fucking stupid. That gives you burgers if you pick it up and then kills you. or having the Squid Game number pad where they all vote on people to eliminate and stuff like that. The other games are the honeycomb cookie thing, battleship instead of tug of war, which I kind of understand. Throughout the whole show, they tend to shy away from games that lean on physical strength or have people directly coming into physical contact with each other in a way that could cause different injuries. I'm guessing because they want to avoid lawsuits, as well as giving the older and less physically able contestants a more fair chance. Anyways, it also had the marbles game, which was honestly set up in a pretty clever way. They had people choose a partner to have a picnic with, and that was the partner for marbles. Weirdly enough, no one really seemed to be clued into it. I feel like I would make an assumption pretty quickly if I was assigned a partner, but I wasn't there. Who knows? They had the glass bridge game, which was played a bit more fair in comparison to the original show, by the rules of the contestants. They just presented it in the TV show, but the people inside the show decided to swap places after going once. Heads Up 7 Up was another game to wean off some remaining people. Jesus Christ, these are lame when they're not in Korea. Korea has way more interesting children games for these format. Some dice game, once again, watch the show if you want to. It's not that interesting. And the final game to decide between the two final people, did they play Squid Game in the show, Squid Game the Challenge? Was it a brutal fight to the death? No, it was fucking rock, paper, scissors, because they couldn't really have two people fighting with knives because Netflix is very afraid of being sued. Which I might be, or at least copyright striked for making this video. And they had like a million iterations of rock, paper, scissors, because when you win rock, paper, scissors, you get to go try a key to open up a safe, but there's like 100 keys. So it was just really drawn out and boring rock, paper, scissors, just back and forth and back and forth. But yeah, and then one person won the game. That's my plot summary part of Squid Game the Challenge. There you go. Now I can title the video Squid Game the Challenge, train wreck of a subversive masterpiece. I'm not calling out anyone in particular here, by the way, just not a fan of analysis videos that are just hour-and-a-half long plot summaries. Go watch or play the thing. Don't let a YouTuber spout off what it is. Form your own opinions and then come back here so I can tell you why your opinion is wrong and then force you to choke down mine because I'm also a manipulative fuck. Go fuck yourself. I hate all my viewers. I don't actually hate my viewers. Please keep watching. Squid Game the Challenge was just a weird decision to make up based off of the TV show. And it really kind of spits in the face of the sensationalization theme I was talking about earlier. I mean, I could go on and on about how terrible it is, and it really is quite bad. The contestants are basically given a little bit of direction to be somewhat actors, I suppose, and play things up for the camera, but it just makes it feel so disingenuous. Almost every person put in front of a camera is trying their hardest to get their own name out and try to be an interesting enough person for the show to put the footage of them on. Maybe like starting off a TikTok career for them or something, but it just comes off as being super conceited and like they wanted to play some sort of like exaggerated character from the get-go to make themselves more interesting, but it's really boring and just makes them all seem very dumb and unlikable. Sorry, got sidetracked. This video is a lot more difficult to come up with a cohesive vision than the last two were. But as I was saying, the really sad part is how this all just kind of cannibalizes the message that the original Squid Game had. It preaches that it's a bad thing to have this every man for himself, winner-take-all mentality, and tries its best to show how destructive that is to a person. But then you put a cash prize in front of all these people and tell them that you actually have to do every man for himself, winner takes all, to win, and you essentially force that mindset into them. And I know people in the challenge have to have watched the show. I mean, during the honeycomb game, you have everyone licking the cookies in the most unsettling ASMR I've ever seen. Third most unsettling ASMR I've ever seen. There's a lot of bad ASMR out there. So at the minimum, you're corrupting the message for the people here and telling them, yes, this show showed you how bad the world is for going for every man for himself, playing up real people in certain ways to make them seem like literal villains and such for money. I mean, they literally called a guy the villain in the show. And they all lean into it, as I was saying earlier. The whole thing just feels like a weird and predatory cash grab off the Squid Game IP to pull in some money and views. And also keep Squid Game in the public eye before Season 2. And of course, people ate it up. It became #1 on Netflix when it was originally released, and from what I can tell, scouring the internet, the reception had some mixed reviews from certain people bringing up irony the same way that I am, but there were also plenty of people talking about it from a place of enjoyment, talking about what people they liked and didn't like throughout the show and all that. once again reinforcing the characters rather than human beings aspect. Plus, judging by the unbelievably cringy ending, they're looking to make a second season. I'm pretty sure I even got an ad for casting while researching for this video. I wonder how they'll manage to pull that off, seeing as Season 2 is somewhat less focused on the games, and so far they've only shown 2 new games within the actual Squid Game in the show, one of which has mini-games that I sincerely doubt a single Western contestant could pull off, and Mingle seems to be a good bit too physical for what the challenge has gone for so far. Well, I certainly will not be watching to find out. The challenge is far from the only example of the rotting of a Squid Game from the forces of capitalism, if you'll excuse my drama.
No, my liege. Your fast and remarkable language is exactly the level of flair that is required for a video like this.
See, look, disco shit. I get unblueballed. So let's do the inevitable and poke the bear. Jimmy Donaldson, aka The Beast. Mr. Beast has 2 Squid Game projects as far as I can tell, and I'm going to go over both of them, but I will warn you that I did not give enough of a shit to watch all of Beast Games up to this point. I have skimmed it and looked at plot summaries, so sue me. I've watched all of the first episode, and after having watched the challenge, I could just not bring myself to sift through more of that drivel. It haunts you, and watching it makes me feel like I'm personally sliding my Prime subscription money into his pocket while he looks at me with the expression.
It appears you're also dead. There's clearly rigor mortis on your face. Or wait, is that an expression? Are you trying to make an expression with that face? Why? Please stop. It's horrible. You're scaring yourself. You can't, can you? It's like it's not even voluntary anymore. You have worn that grin into your face, and now it won't come off. What does it even mean? What is the emotion you're trying to convey?
Superstardom. So, we've got one of the first, but not only, Squid Game in real life examples with good old Jimmy's Squid Game in real life video. It follows the general structure of the original Season 1 of Squid Game. Squid Game, Squid Game, Squid Game, Squid Game, Game, Squid Game. The word is going through Gestaltserfall for me at this point. So, basically, you've just got a 20-ish minute video with a stake of $456,000. Lower stakes than the challenge, but it's also a significantly smaller production, and it gives out consolation prizes to others. Now, that consolation prize is something that people are going to have varied opinions about in relation to Mr. Beast's character. Is it done because he is truly a big fan of philanthropy and likes giving things to others, or is it to cover his ass if people get mad at the hypocrisy of the concept of a Squid Game in real life? I think it's probably a combination of both and neither. Now, if you'll let me ramble a little bit, I don't think Mr. Beast is this Machiavellian sociopath or anything like that. I think he just genuinely wants to be the best YouTuber possible. Now, what is his definition of best? Most profitable and brand awareness. It's as simple as that. He wants success in the simplest way that can possibly be described: money and fame. So, that's really all these consolation prizes serve to do. They exist for the purpose of entertainment and the preservation of this idea that being on or associated with Mr. Beast is a good thing that will happen to you. Even if you don't win, you make money. I'm not really here to comment on the character of Mr. Beast that much, though. He no longer exists as a human being in my mind, to be honest. There is no longer any distinction between who he is as a person and the brand that has become Mr. Beast. His decisions are probably integral to the operation, yes, but he doesn't build the sets. He doesn't screen the people. He is functionally a CEO who works as the face of the company. None of this really matters, though. I'm a drop in the bucket to criticizing Mr. Beast. So, Squid Game in real life is basically just a cartoon version of Squid Game. It's bland, says nothing, and does nothing. There's no commentary on anything, not even an attempted facade of bleakness and capitalism stuff that Squid Game the Challenge has. There are no characters in the story. It's just people doing the games, bright colors, money, hit the subscribe button, like the video, buy the merch. It's candy entertainment. In one ear, out the next immediately. All discussion of it is reduced to vacuous noise. It spits in the face of Squid Game's messaging? Yeah, no shit. I'm not a genius for pointing that out. That was what my original segment of this video was going to be about, but I feel like that's a bit of a naive perspective to bring to the table here. A better question to ask is what that kind of sensationalist name-calling actually does. Criticism has always been an interesting art form, which I am willing to call it that. Is it good art? Usually not, but it is a piece of media created that says something about the human condition. Why do we have an unmistakable urge to point out the obvious? To take a look at whatever piece of hypocrisy or flaw you can find in something and act as if it's a significant gotcha. What I'm trying to say here is that the rhetoric of criticism is functionally useless the majority of the time if the only output from it is thing bad, person bad. Mr. Beast does not care if you think that Squid Game in real life is hypocritical. It does not exist for the same purpose that the original Squid Game does. It is a fundamentally different beast, if you'll excuse the pun, clothed in the skin of a piece of art. It should not be treated with the same level of discussion. This is why I really don't want to talk about Beast games here. I watched the first episode and realized that no matter how much of it I watch or go through, it wouldn't contribute anything meaningful to this video. Sure, I could go through each episode and tear apart all the bad parts of them, and look at all of the articles describing how the conditions were bad during the filming, and say Mr. Beast is a bad person, but that won't change anything. It just reinforces the mindsets of people who agree with me and pushes away those who don't. That's polarization right there. Nothing meaningful is gained from a hit piece besides making more haters for the canceled person to not give a shit about, and then they fall deeper and deeper into whatever radicalization they already exist within. So, what are you supposed to do? Well, you need to look at where this comes from, and where it comes from is the same kind of system described in Squid Game. A world that's excited by any prospects of money and is willing to sacrifice anything and everything for a chance to make it big. I mean, there's a bit of an aspirational aspect to certain parts of Mr. Beast's story. He put his everything into a certain skill, the YouTube game, and essentially won it. If put in the same shoes as him, having worked at this for years and years and then finally seeing massive success, turning yourself into a philanthropist who makes money off your philanthropy and gets famous from your philanthropy doesn't sound that bad. Have things been mismanaged? Yes. Is he primarily still focused on success rather than philanthropy? Also, yes. Is that the fault of the individual being an evil, quote-unquote, person? It's complicated. The system is what reinforces that above everything. We live in a world that rewards fast, disposable content for the sake of money rather than art that tries to say something to benefit the world. If everyone in a class fails a test, you should probably blame the teacher. Mr. Beast just failed the test especially hard if we're looking at it from this perspective. Mr. Beast is a product that makes products, an actual byproduct of the consumerist society we live in. If it wasn't him, if Mr. Beast didn't exist, someone else would take his place. We need to change the system of how people are rewarded in order to change the products that are made by this world. And that, my friend, is a nearly impossible problem to solve. I mean, I could probably go on and on and on and on and on about the products created from Squid Game by the world we live in. When presented with something that represents something you enjoy, people will give over their wallets in a second. All it takes is 1 second, a tiny lapse in the perceived anti-capitalist judgment to make a purchase that throws away all that one sees himself to be. And these things are fun, I'm not gonna lie. I like Gi-hoon as a character. If I wasn't that broke right now, I could see myself buying a little figure of him or something, and I bet a Squid Game board game would probably be pretty fun too. Entertainment is something that all people crave, and Squid Game, despite all of its messaging, is entertaining first and foremost. If it wasn't, if it was just an art piece that said things about capitalism, it probably wouldn't be nearly as successful. Let's not kid ourselves. Now, the Disco Elysium video is coming next, but this also applies to Disco. Disco is funny. Very funny. The characters are charismatic. Very charismatic. There are probably plenty of people who played the game and got some of the messaging through, but primarily just enjoyed it because the characters are fun and the dialogue is funny. People like to go buy things about a certain piece of media because they reflect who they are as a person. I mean, look at the massive sales of a certain green Nintendo's character's hat after that incident. We all know the one I'm talking about. And let me just tell you, he probably wouldn't want you to go buy an off-brand Nintendo merch drop-shipped from some country millions of miles away that goes straight into some executive's pocket and is made by a sweatshop worker. But also, like, wearing a hat that essentially says, "Fuck the system" is cool. People like doing it. I'm reminded of the song Rock and Roll Lifestyle by Cake. Fantastic band, by the way. John McCree is a wonderful lyricist. A portion of the lyrics from the song go like this. Excess ain't rebellin'. You're drinking what they're sellin' now. Your self-destruction doesn't hurt them. Your chaos won't convert them. They're so happy to rebuild it, you'll never really kill it. Now, I'm not the fun police. I don't personally have any problems with there being fun things based on Squid Game. The Roblox Squid Game was okay. I kinda enjoyed it. The same can be extended to just about anything adjacent to Squid Game. There's an inherent entertainment value that someone gets from it, and that's okay. This world would be a whole lot worse without entertainment in it. Not everything has to be a strong piece of art that changes how you view your existence and the world as a whole. One of my favorite games right now is Deep Rock Galactic, and yeah, it has some occasional environmental messaging in it, but I mostly like it because it's fun. Very fun. The messaging doesn't have to be there for that. And for a lot of people, the messaging doesn't have to be there for them to enjoy Squid Game, and that's also okay. I mean, entertainment is also important just in the way that the more eyes are on a thing, the more of a chance it gets to spread its message. If Squid Game was not as widespread as it is, the message wouldn't have gotten nearly as far. I mean, I only watched it because I planned to make this video, which I only started making because I saw the dilution of it by so many other things. But that dilution does exist, and it's not an easy problem to solve. Should art have as big of a platform if giving it that platform gives tons and tons of money to those that it directly criticizes? Or should all meaningful art be kept smaller and away from those big marketing groups, the publicists, the Netflix, the Spotify of the world, keeping the message more pure but reaching less of a public eye? I don't think there's a concrete answer to this. So, I think we can finally talk about Squid Game Season 2. And if I'm being completely honest, I'm a bit stuck here writing this. The creator has publicly stated that a major factor in making this season was the success of Season 1. He didn't have very many plans to start with for making it, but he also didn't get a good deal on residuals for Season 1. He was hoping that this one would set him up for life. And I really can't blame him. I would certainly do the same. When it comes to it, if I'm asked to continue to make something that I expected to be finished, that I closed the book on, in exchange for providing for myself and my loved ones for the rest of my life, I would. Of course I would. Plus, he did get to say some more messaging in it, and it helps him be able to make more things down the road. I'd say it's an okay season, despite all of that. Not nearly as strong as Season 1, but it still has some pretty decent messaging. Jack Saint's video, which I mentioned earlier, has a pretty good breakdown on Season 2, and how it shows the flaws of an attempt to dismantle a system from within the bounds of the system, and how despite Gi-hoon's nearly endless resources, he cannot defeat the games because the mechanisms behind it are those of a long-lasting and pervasive world of capitalism. People will choose to be in the games even if they aren't really fully aware of the danger and all of the negatives, because their financial situation has turned an opportunity like this into one that really isn't a choice. It's risk your life for a chance of success, or go back and throw away your life in the guarantee of debt. There is no picking yourself up by your bootstraps for these people. It's already too far gone. As I said, Jack Saint does a better job of describing it than I did. A big flaw I see in this season is the almost nostalgia pandering to Season 1. The first few episodes are unmistakably weaker than the others from a pure entertainment perspective. I enjoyed them, myself, a good bit, but I do see the flaws in it brought up by other people. It looks more like some generic action show than Squid Game, which I hate to say. Squid Game is defined by the games, and the show does pick up once the games start. It really sucks to have to admit that. And the games are entertaining. The show almost feels algorithmically designed in some ways, and it works. I liked watching Mingle, which felt like it was intentionally designed to be turned into a Roblox game or something. And the relay race style game was pretty good too. I liked the teamwork between the different characters, the tension brought up by it, musical beats. It was cinematically very well. Also, I just mean the Russian roulette section between Gi-hoon and the recruiter, the music choices, the lighting, it was just fucking phenomenal from a cinematic, and especially with how well they pulled off tension. One of the major themes I saw, and I really want to talk about that I found personally interesting while watching the show, was the kind of class war subplot they had going on between the X's and the O's. Essentially, what happened at the end of every game is a vote to determine whether or not the games get to continue. If you vote for the games to keep continuing, the games keep on going just as normal. But if you vote for them to end, fucking hell, who texted me? So, at the end of every game, the ever-dwindling group of people all line up and vote either X to end the game or O to continue playing. If you end the game, all the players leave and split the money that has been made up to this point, or you could choose to continue with the hope that more people will die and more money will be made. Every time that the vote is seen in Season 2, the vote either ends up tying or the O's narrowly win. As is with Squid Game, though, eventually conflict breaks out between the people playing these games. In this season, though, instead of a general brawl, you get a focused fight with the O's targeting the X's in order to eke out just enough players to win the vote. What Gi-hoon brings up, though, is that this conflict isn't actually what they really need to be fighting for. The people running the games are the true enemies that they need to focus and fight against. The one running the games have intentionally set up this conflict, though, as a distraction from the actual conflict that needs to occur in order to meaningfully change the games. As long as they're infighting, they won't turn on them. And as long as they're infighting, they are still contributing to the concept of the games as a whole. It's just another test to eliminate players for entertainment value. I think you can start to see the parallels here. I'm fairly certain this is an intentional piece of commentary on the fabricated cultural and political schisms between the world, an imaginary piece of conflict that only serves to distract and disorient from the actual problems that plague our day-to-day lives. A good parallel can be drawn with ideas like political polarization, while billionaires lobby droves upon droves of money to both political parties, or different arguments over the internet between so-called revolutionaries about the individual meaningless details about what particular school of thought they want to apply to their revolution, or the methods on how they're going to achieve their revolution, or all these different tiny little details that have people fighting against each other constantly. Leftist infighting, one of my favorite things mentioned in Disco Elysium, and I'm going to talk about it in the next video, is the most communist thing you can do, is argue with other communists about what real communism is. All it does is serve to distract from the actual goal, which is mobilizing a revolution and holding the upper class accountable to stop them from oppressing the lower class. There is no significant differences between real-life people who are in the lower class rather than these basically like accessories, these tiny little details that don't actually have any significance. Gender differences, racial differences, all of it, it doesn't fundamentally make a difference between which each person is. But different people have been groomed in certain ways to have this inherent hatred towards anyone who is not like them. You want to know who's really not like you? The person who is worth millions of times more than you are. The people who make these massive decisions, who control everything about your life, that, like, okay, I'm gonna get political right now. Immigrants aren't why things are expensive, guys. I'm assuming it's mostly, I doubt there's very many people who actually believe this that are watching my video. So once again, I'm spitting this into an echo chamber. But immigrants aren't the reason that things are expensive. Corporations are the reason that things are expensive. If a company sees the opportunity to make more money by charging more for something, they're going to charge more for something. And then if they can offset that blame onto another group that doesn't have any significant, meaningful ways to defend themselves, that they see a way to push a conflict onto them, they're going to do it. Essentially, though, these are all just distractions, purposefully inundated into the minds of the masses to keep us from becoming an actual threat to those who hold the power. I kind of suppose that's what this is too. I'm sitting here writing a video about Squid Game and how it's hypocritical. I could be going through and trash talking every grifter YouTuber who made brain rot Squid Game videos and say how that's terrible and that's bad and it's not art, it's meaningless. But that really doesn't do much, does it? Actions like that against our fellow man doesn't do anything to meaningfully change the world. They're just trying to make money off something, the same way that everyone else is. I mean, theoretically, I could be lumped into the same category. My channel isn't monetized yet, but I stand to benefit from the success of Squid Game by getting views and somewhat pandering to the algorithm. Cards on the table, that was my intention in the first place with making this video. I wasn't really super invested into the messaging of Squid Game or felt I had anything strong to say about it from an art perspective. I just saw the potential to attach it to a discussion I wanted to do about Disco Elysium, and I knew overall a more popular piece of media like Squid Game could garner more attention to a less popular video that would just be about Disco Elysium. Does that make me evil, a terrible anti-art person who treats my discussion as a product to be bought and sold for views rather than existing for the sake of art? Of course not. It's significantly more complicated than that. There has to be this balance between art for art's sake and art for profit. Artists have to eat too, and if they want to be able to really spread their words, music, visual art, or any other form of media concessions have to be made for marketing and distribution. Netflix, Amazon, Steam, Spotify, YouTube, and all the other possible distribution services. You have to make specific decisions about what your art is in order for it to become profitable. I mean, look at Black Tabby Games for a weak example, the studio behind Scarlet Hollow and Slay the Princess. According to a developer interview from them, Slay the Princess was originally created because they just didn't have enough money to keep working on Scarlet Hollow, their original passion project. Luckily, they're brilliant, amazing developers and managed to get Slay the Princess out as a piece of art first and foremost. It became another passion project for them in the process of creating it. But it's another example of working on something for a money-related purpose at the beginning, and it still coming out and becoming art. I think Squid Game Season 2 is somewhat like that. I have a feeling that after the success of Squid Game Season 1, there was a bit more executive decisions related in the release of Season 2, or at least a guiding hand of Netflix telling the writers what to include in the story. But it still managed to hold on to some kind of internal message. I don't think it's trash like a lot of people seem to think it is. It's weaker, definitely. It was created off the bones of something that was not intended to have a Season 2, and it's kind of obvious. That's just the sacrifice that has to be made sometimes. The show as a concept didn't need another season, so you're already starting out at the bat running out of creative ideas, because Season 1 already said all that it really needed to say. I'm really hoping that Season 3 will bring it all together in a neat bow, and just tie Squid Game as a concept into this brilliant trilogy masterpiece, but I also don't see what conclusion it could come up with that's more hopeful or meaningful than the ending of Season 1. The ending of Season 1 is what really needs to be extrapolated from Squid Game. The moment where Gi-hoon proves Il-nam wrong. As long as we show compassion for our fellow man and work to bring each other up rather than tear each other down for our own benefit, there is hope in this world. So I think I'm rambling a bit at this point. The next video coming out is a sequel to this one. It's about Disco Elysium and a similar fate it suffered at the hands of executive meddling and how it was stolen from the original creators. I'm really passionate about this one specifically. Please stick around. I hope you guys subscribe, or at least just take a look at the channel every once in a while to see if it came out. I'm thinking about a month's time on it, maybe less. I'm really proud with how it's coming along. Link below is a GoFundMe that was recently completed for one of the developers of Zaum that lost Disco as well. He tried to start his own Disco spiritual successor company, Summer Eternal, and then got illegitimately sued into the ground by the original company in a paperwork lawsuit, essentially looking to drown him in fees and paperwork so he wouldn't be able to continue to work. There's not really any significant legal bearing on it. But anyways, go take a look and donate if you can. Thanks for sticking around to this point. I don't know how I feel about this video. This is not scripted. I'm going on my own rambling bit right here. I don't know. This was a hard video to write. I hope you guys got something significant out of it. I've been struggling with writing in a way where it's like, am I including enough? Am I writing enough stuff here? Am I hitting all of the points? I hope you guys are just ignoring it for what it says rather than what it doesn't say. Seeing that Jack Saint video came out, phenomenal YouTuber. I've been subscribed to him for a while. I loved what he talked about, but it really made me question my own. I got a little bit of imposter syndrome after seeing that, because he basically just, my original video, half of this video is essentially just criticizing what the original video was. It was this piece of criticism that mostly just dunked on all these other things and is like, look how anti-art this is. Fuck that. And then Jack Saint released his video and he was like, actually, if you do that, you're stupid. And I was like, yeah, you're right. If I do that, I'm stupid. I also came to some similar conclusions as him with writing, especially just from a thematic perspective. But I didn't feel like going over it again. Doubling down on things is kind of pointless. Sorry, I'm still rambling. Thank you for sticking around, and thanks for the success on my last video, the Slay the Princess one. I didn't expect for it to take off like that at all. It was out for 4 days, and it had accrued 15 views, and I'm like, well, that one was a flop. And then I think it's nearing, like, 4.5K at this point. So thank you very, very much. I don't know if the same people are going to be watching this video. I'm hoping so. Please stick around. I plan to put a lot more stuff out. My timetable is usually about 1 month per video, so you're not looking at your subscription feed being slammed or anything like that. I got very busy recently because I got a new job, so I don't have as much time for videos as I used to, but I'm I'm still gonna try and stick to that, even if the videos have to be a little shorter. This one's a little bit shorter, but yeah, thank you. Goodbye, everyone, and I wish you the best in whatever you're doing right now. I'm a rambling person. I'm gonna stop talking now. I'm gonna hit the stop record button.